Today we're going to learn about how to start a project. For most of you, you're familiar with Adobe, you're familiar with some of their programs. This is not much different from program to program on this screen. We have a couple of projects here that I've used in the past. If this is your first time with Adobe, you may get the Learn box here. These are great tutorials, walkthroughs. If you ever want to learn more about certain parts, course overviews is a great one. If you want to go into creating a project, there's a lot of great tutorials in here. But I'm glad you're watching this one. So we're back to the home. Click the home there. And we start off with this button up here in the blue called New Project. We're going to click it. It's going to take us to the project opening screen. And here we've got a couple things we want to pay attention to. That's project name up here in the upper left, sequence name on the right, and in the middle we're going to see it populated with some footage that I have stored in a folder here. You can change this folder by clicking here and go into whatever folder you need to. That way you've got the footage where you're at. You can interact with it, make the clips smaller, larger. You can make them by list. You can filter them. There's a lot of things you can do here. So we're going to start with how to start a project with your folder open. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say Untitled. We're going to call this Practice 1, and we'll go from there. Now over here I want to set my sequence up, Practice. It's good to do this so you know what sequences you're working with in case you want to do multiple. Now we're going to click on some of these clips. Now the thing about this, when I click on it, it's going to drag the clips automatically into my sequence when I start. So I don't have to drag over, import new clips. It's going to import these and put them on my timeline. If you've seen other tutorials, you kind of know what the timeline is, the sequence is. So we'll kind of cover that when we get there. So I've got a couple clips there, and we're just going to go from here and hit the button down here called Create. Now I've got my editing interface here. Up here I've got my source clip, so if I click on a button, it's up here. I got my program. This is what's playing on the timeline, and this is what's playing from the project panel down here if I need to do any pre-editing to it before I put it on my timeline. Now if you notice my timeline or my sequence here, it already has my clips on it. And so I'm right here, there's a couple kids playing, a couple kids kicking there. It's great. Now over here in my project panel, I've got my sequence. What I like to do is create a new bin. I right click, new bin, and call it video. You can call it clips, whatever, and I take my clips and I control click them and drag them into my video bin. Now I know the difference between my sequence right here, which has these little dots in it, and my videos, which is more of a film strip right here. I've got my clips on my timeline. If I wanted to import a new clip, I would right click import. This is just one way to do this now. And let's say I want to introduce the skydiving MP4 here. We're going to open that up, and that brings me into skydiving, and I can click this drag. Now notice there's no audio on this clip. It was not recorded with audio. It did not bring any audio with it. So I don't have audio there, and I don't have audio. I do have audio on these, although it doesn't look like there's anything playing there. If you look, there's no bump over here. So I've got my project started. I've got my clips on my timeline. Now let's look at what do we do. If you want to save it, you go to File, Save. Now there is an auto function on here. It auto saves probably every 15 or 20 minutes if it's just on the presets. You can change that to 5 or 10. I definitely recommend using that in case your computer freezes, power goes out. There's a lot of things that can happen. And then it goes back to your autosave if you lose all your work. You'll get some of your work back on that. So I would use the autosave. You go down here, Edit, Preferences, Autosave, and if you'll look, this is automatically saves every 15 minutes maximum. You can adjust those to what you need. Click OK, and you've auto-saved. Now we're to the point where we saved. We've got our autosave set up. We might want to work on this project later, but we might want to export it. If we click up here, this new Export tab has everything we need to export. It's going to take a minute to load right here. Now, you notice right now if I export it, it's going to export the entirety of our project, and that's fine. We can rename it here, you know, instead of Practice 1, Project 1. And we can click here to go to where we want to save it to, okay? And then this is just match source is kind of the normal. It's whatever you're bringing in. It's going to match. You can go in here and change some of the settings on video, Those will be covered in later tutorials if we need to do that. Captions, effects, metadata, general. And you have a choice here to export it using Adobe Premiere Pro and your GPU or your CPU, or you can send it to Media Encoder. We'll talk about Media Encoder later. If you send it to Media Encoder, that's a whole different tutorial. Not hard, but for the most part, you're going to hit this export button and you're going to export. Or let's say you want to just the clients and you want them to see just this one part. So I can go here, drag to where the, say, that's the skydiving footage. We want to end right there, and I can click my out button, and that way I can actually change this to source into out. So it'll only export what I have into out. I can do entire source, I can do custom, work area, whatever I'm doing. Let's do source into out on this one, and we hit export, and it's going to pop the screen up. It says how long it takes to export. Depending on the length of your project, the effects in your project, this is going to change. And once you get this little blue block, you've exported. All right, that's pretty much it. That's how to set your project up, bring in clips a couple of different ways, and export your project. It's pretty much all you're going to need to know to get started with editing. There is a lot more to this program. It's so deep. And the basics is where you need to start. Don't worry about getting too in-depth. YouTube University is great for the little things you want to learn. This tutorial is part of that. And so thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. We'll see you next time.